What if your DNA hadn't really changed much for, say, 4,000 years?
Hmm.
Imagine that. What if your ancestors passed down a genetic code so untouched it basically became a living museum of prehistory?
Yeah, that sounds pretty remarkable, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's exactly the fascinating idea we're exploring today.
It truly is. In this deep dive, we're sort of unpacking what people sometimes informally call the Ireland gene.
Right.
It's this unique genetic blueprint that, well, researchers suggest has stayed incredibly stable, even with all the waves of migration and colonization across Europe.
So our mission today is really to dig into that mystery. How and maybe why do we see this genetic continuity?
Exactly.
We want to go beyond just the simple answers, look at the complexities, the implications for, identity and health, and yeah, even touch on some of the controversies that pop up.
Quite a genetic story. The core idea, really, is that modern Irish people share this striking genetic link, this continuity, with ancient Neolithic and Bronze Age settlers.
And this isn't just guesswork, right? There's solid research behind it.
Oh, absolutely. Not just a hypothesis. There's significant research supporting it.
That's what makes it so compelling. I know researchers at Trinity College Dublin and the Wellcome Sanger Institute did some groundbreaking work. There was that landmark 2015 study in PNAS.
That's the one. A pivotal study.
And they found, get this, that modern Irish genomes are over 85% similar to ancient genomes found in Irish tombs dating back 4,000 years.
85%. It's an extraordinary level of continuity, much higher than you see in many other parts of Europe. It's almost like, as you said, finding a perfectly preserved ancient text.
Wow. So a key takeaway here is that Ireland has one of the most genetically homogeneous populations in Europe.
That's right. And that really surprised a lot of scientists. Because unlike, say, England or mainland Europe, Ireland wasn't heavily impacted by the Roman occupation or later large-scale invasions.
Oh, great.
Those events tended to dilute gene pools elsewhere, mix things up much more.
So Ireland was kind of genetically sheltered in a way, which makes its DNA this unique window into prehistoric Europe.
Precisely. A living genetic record, hidden right there in plain sight. It gives us this almost direct line back to the past.
Incredible. But okay, beyond just the historical curiosity, what can this unique profile tell us about specific traits, like something really iconic, like red hair?
That's a great question. It connects directly to that broader idea of Irish identity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, you can't really talk about Irish genetics without getting into the MC1R gene.
The red hair gene.
That's the one. It basically controls pigment production and is, well, largely responsible for red hair.
Right. The stereotype is huge, but there's actual science here. Ireland has the highest proportion of redheads globally. Yeah. Something like 10%.
Around 10%, yeah, and maybe up to 35% carry the gene variant itself, so it's very prevalent.
But what's really interesting, I read, is the why. It's not just random, is it? There's an adaptation aspect.
Exactly. This is where it gets biologically quite fascinating.
Yeah.
The same genetic mutations linked to red hair and often paler skin are also tied to vitamin D absorption.
Ah, okay. Makes sense for a climate that's often less than sunny.
Precisely.
Mm.
In Ireland's often overcast, low sunlight environment, being able to synthesize vitamin D efficiently was a big advantage. It helped ancient populations avoid things like rickets, bone disease.
So it conferred a selective advantage. Wow.
It really did. It's a subtle but really powerful example of human evolution adapting to local conditions.
So more than just a quaint trait, it's biology fine-tuning for survival. That's powerful. But does that mean red hair is exclusively Irish? Because I know that's a point of contention.
Right.
Some critics argue it gets over-romanticized, used as this marker of authentic Irishness. But you find those genes in Scotland, Wales, Scandinavia too, don't you?
You absolutely do. And this brings us to a really crucial and sometimes, well, controversial side of this research.
The potential for misuse.
Exactly. The risks that it gets twisted. In recent years, you've seen some nationalist voices, particularly from more extremist groups, trying to grab onto this idea of a pure Ireland gene.
To push certain agendas.
To push agendas, yeah. Things like ethnic exclusion or anti-immigration policies, using genetics to justify division.
That's obviously deeply problematic. So how does the scientific community respond? How do they counter that kind of harmful narrative?
Well, they push back very strongly. Scientists are really clear on this. Yes, genetic continuity exists, but it absolutely does not equal cultural or ethnic superiority.
That distinction is vital.
It's critical.
Yeah.
Continuity doesn't mean purity, and it certainly doesn't mean exclusivity. For most people, modern Irish identity is built on shared values, language, history, culture, not just DNA.
And history itself shows mixing, right? Even in Ireland.
Definitely. Ireland's history includes Viking settlers, Anglo-Norman lords, Ulster Scots. They all left their mark.
Yeah.
Maybe smaller genetic footprints than in other places, but meaningful ones nonetheless.
There was a quote you mentioned earlier.
Yes. Dr. Laurie Cassidy, a leading geneticist in Ireland, put it perfectly. She said, "Our genes tell a story, but not the full one. Culture writes the rest."
Culture writes the rest. I like that. It really puts genetics in its proper context. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, but related. This genetic isolation, it has medical implications too, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It's actually a really significant consequence, or rather, aspect.
In what way?
Well, this unique genetic landscape, this relative homogeneity, it offers researchers a kind of advantage in studying certain diseases.
How so?
Genetic isolation makes it easier to identify rare disease-causing mutations, especially in, say, rural or island communities where historical population bottlenecks occurred.
Bottlenecks, meaning the population shrank, concentrating certain genes.
Exactly. Periods where the gene pool got smaller, which inadvertently preserved or increased the frequency of certain genetic variants, including some linked to disease.
So it's like a more focused genetic environment for tracking specific markers down.
Yeah.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Cystic fibrosis is a well-known one. Ireland has one of the highest rates per capita in the world. Affects roughly 1 in every 460 people there.
Wow, that's high.
It is. And there are others, like a specific mutation, R141H in the TMC1 gene, linked to early onset deafness. That mutation is significantly more common in some parts of Western Ireland.
So Ireland's genetic story is almost like a unique research tool, a cheat sheet for medical genetics in some ways.
You could kind of see it like that, yes. It has definitely helped advance research and points towards potential precision medicine strategies.
But I imagine that comes with some heavy ethical consideration.
Oh, absolutely. It's a critical ethical tightrope to walk.
Issues like genetic privacy, maybe communities feeling overstudied.
Precisely. It sparks really important debates about who owns this genetic information, how it's used, ensuring benefits are shared equitably and critically, gaining informed consent.
So making sure communities are partners in the research, not just subjects.
Exactly. Transparency and respect for autonomy are paramount. Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge for sure.
A complex issue. And speaking of complexity and identity, there's this interesting paradox, isn't there, with Ireland's global footprint.
Ah, yes, the diaspora effect.
Right. The DNA within Ireland is relatively homogeneous, but the Irish diaspora has spread Irish genes, so to speak, all over the world, fueling tons of genetic research globally.
It's quite the phenomenon. You've got, what, over 70 million people worldwide claiming Irish ancestry?
Compared to just over 5 million living in Ireland today, it's a huge difference.
Massive. And it means this Ireland gene, or rather these Irish genetic markers, form one of the most researched diaspora DNA pools out there. It drives a lot of studies, ancestry testing, and so on.
Which really brings us back to that deep question. What actually makes someone truly Irish? Is it the ancestry traced through DNA, or is it identity, culture, lived experience?
It throws that question into sharp relief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It prompts a lot of reflection on belonging, heritage, and how we define ourselves in the modern world.
So let's try and recap this deep dive then. The Ireland gene, is it real?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that Irish genetics show this remarkable rare continuity with the deep past, and that offers profound insights, scientifically, medically.
But no, if it's misused as some kind of tool for division or exclusion, or to create this false ideal of identity based purely on bloodlines.
Exactly. The real story is so much richer, more complex than that. It's shaped by millennia of history, migration, cultural exchange, shared values, not just inherited DNA sequences.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty powerful thought to mull over, maybe.
Indeed. Should ancient DNA shape modern cultural identity? Or is the story of Ireland, and really maybe any nation, fundamentally one of evolution, migration, and a unity that goes beyond biology?
Something to think about. We really encourage you to consider these ideas. Your perspective, your voice, it's all part of this ongoing Lang conversation.